Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to TSNN's live webinar series. In today's webinar, we will unlock some of the secrets behind event technology. Our expert moderator and panelists will answer questions during the last 10 to 15 minutes on our webinar, so please join in. Alternatively, you can join the conversation and ask questions on Twitter at hashtag TSNNWebinar at any time. Now it is my pleasure to turn over the floor to Arlene Shows, Marketing Manager for TSNN. Ma'am, the floor is yours.
Hello from TSNN. Thank you. And hello from TSNN and welcome everyone. During our educational and complimentary webinars, TSNN presents trends and the latest happenings in the trade show industry for our audience. Today's content promises to unlock the secrets of event technology with top experts cluing us in. So we're happy you joined us. Big thanks to our devoted sponsors, Signature Boston, MCCA, Core Apps, and Onstream Media. With their support, we're able to deliver these topics to you free of charge. Many thanks to Signature Boston and the Massachusetts Convention Center Authority. Boston certainly represents unique benefits and advantages of bringing an event there, including state-of-the-art facilities, first-class hotels, unique history, culture, and top-notch services, including free Wi-Fi throughout the BCEC and the Hines. They are high-tech in every way. Major appreciations to Core Apps, an event technology company that focuses on making an event organizer's life easier. They provide a total ecosystem of event technology that begins right after registration. Core Apps is the leading provider of technology for the trade show and events industry. The company supports more than 50% of the top 250 trade shows and is the only technology platform offering event management, mobile apps, beacons, and kiosks in 4 Tier 1 solutions. Founded in 2009, the company is headquartered in Arnold, Maryland, and serves customers around the globe. For more information, visit coreapps.com. One more quick thanks goes out to Onstream Media. All of TSNN's webinars are brought to you by Onstream, the leader in multimedia webinar and webcasting services. They are a leading online service provider of corporate audio and web communications, and of course is being used today to power our event. To learn more, just visit onstreammedia.com. Now, for all you techies out there who know the pace of technology change is constantly accelerating, TSNN just recently released a report last week with important data and analysis to help you stay ahead of the curve. Email me, Arlene Shows, if you're interested in receiving a copy. My contact is on the slide and is also on tsnn.com. Now allow me to introduce our speakers today and our moderator. Michelle Bruno is a writer, blogger, and technology journalist. She develops content and content strategies for event industry technology companies at Bruno Group Signature Services. She writes about event technology, design, and strategy at Fork in the Road blog and publishes Event Tech Brief, a newsletter for web and website for event technologists and event technology solution providers. So thanks again for joining us, and let's get started. Michelle?
Thank you so much, Arlene. First, I would love to introduce our panelists. We have with us today Tahira Andine. Her bio says she's been planning meetings and producing events since the dawn of the thermal paper fax machine. I think I have you beat on that, Tahira. But Tahira believes in the power of live events and embracing technology across all aspects to deliver and share content, to enhance dialogue and connections, and drive growth. She's currently the event producer of the BC Tech Summit, which showcases the technology ecosystem of British Columbia. She blogs at Events, Life, and Impact Points. Our other another of our panelists, is Elizabeth Glau. She is the Attendee Experience Manager for the International Society for Technology and Education, where she helps ensure an exceptional experience for conference attendees through program navigation, on-site wayfinding, and comfort, the event mobile app, on-site registration enhancements, first-time attendee support, event social media, and conference volunteer training and recognition. Okay, Elizabeth, what don't you do? She's also actively engaged with educators as the moderator of the conference community. She blogs at elizabethglau.com. And finally, we have our token male. Sorry, Jay, but I know you're probably enjoying all of this. Jay Tokosch is CEO of Core Apps, a leading event technology company specializing in a suite of products that form a total solution for event organizers. Core Apps was the first native mobile application introduced into the event industry in 2009 and is now used by over 50% of the top 250 events. Prior to Core Apps, he was CEO of AV1 Studios, a manufacturer of audio-video equipment for residential and mobile solutions. And Jay told me he's a serial entrepreneur. You've had, 6 different startups over the years. So if there's a question about technology, especially event technology, I'm going to toss it to you because I'm sure that you'll know the answer. So let's get going on. We came up with a bunch of questions that closely mirror the event technology report that Arlene referred to at the beginning of in the introduction. I thought it would be interesting if, in addition to looking over the report, I asked actual live people that are out in the field engaged in answering these questions to see what they thought about some of the same questions that are in the report and some new ones. But overall, we're going to be looking at trends. We're going to be looking at specific technologies as well as how they're used in data and some maybe even high-level ideas about technology in general. So let's get started. First question is really about the most important technology trends over the past couple of years. And I know that's an extremely difficult question to ask and to answer because there's so much going on. But I wanted to start sort of with Tahira. Tahira, for you, engagement tools are sort of the one thing that resonates with you. But I'm wondering if you could expand on that a little bit more.
Sure. I think that, the thing with engagement is it really looks at how do you bring together all of your attendees into an experience that they're sharing, but at the same time that they're also personalizing. And so how can we do everything from the very beginning when they start to register to get them to engage and share on their social network, join, perhaps a forum that is, or, some kind of a group that is related to the event, start to develop relationships ahead of time. So engagement can start from the beginning, work all the way through, and also when they're on site, really looking at are they able to engage with each other, whether that is through social sharing or through setting up individual meetings with people. How can they interact with the speakers? It's really that whole idea that everybody is showing up with digitally enabled lifestyles now. So how are we using the technology to just really create a more holistic experience that looks at the person plus their smartphone?
Thank you. So, Elizabeth, in your capacity as the sort of minder and caretaker of attendees for your association event, you think a lot about personalization. So one of the major trends that you identified was really using data to personalize the experience for attendees. So explain that a little bit more. How do you do that?
Yeah, and the reason for that, Michelle, is our conference is 20,000 attendees. If you add up all of the attendees and presenters and exhibitors, and so one of the only complaints that we get is just that our conference feels too big. And so that's probably one of my main focus is just to make it feel more personal and individualized for them and making sure they get what they need. So that's kind of why I have a focus that I do these days on using data to help personalize that.
And I know we're going to talk more about that as we go on. Jay, you drilled right down to the shiny objects.
I did.
So talk to me about how you feel virtual reality, augmented reality, all of those things, beacons, chatbots, are going to shape the future of event technology.
Well, and it's funny because I look at what Tahira said and Elizabeth said, and they were more general. And you're right, I did drill straight down to it. I think these are all technologies that at this particular time are things that are in their infancy stages. We're still trying to figure out how they fit into events. We see them in other places, and what we've learned, or what I've learned in the short period of time that I've been in the industry since 2009, is that these technologies don't always fit into this industry. They may do really well someplace else in the corporate world or something else, but we have to figure out how they fit into our industry. And these are things that are kind of going on with these types of specific ones that I put out here today, with being able to do that. But they're absolutely engagement tools, exactly what Tahira was saying, and they're ways to make things feel more personalized, like a chat bot that Elizabeth was talking about, trying to be more personalized with 20,000 attendees. How do we drill down and be more personalized to them? A chatbot is something that could absolutely do something like that.
So I want to talk to you guys about, we talked about what sorts of things have been thrown at us, but I want to know specifically the most significant or impactful piece of technology that you guys are all using right now, and or for you, Jay, what you see your organizer clients using. And two of you, I'm going to go to Jay first. Two of you said the mobile app, and obviously Jay, as a mobile app company, or as a company that has among its portfolio of technologies a mobile app, you talked about mobile app being very significant, but you also talked about using the mobile app all year round, and that's one nut we have not been able to crack. So maybe talk about the mobile app as being very significant at this point, but also the potential of using it after the show.
Yeah, that's, and I did say that, even though, obviously we do mobile apps, but, the 365-day year-round, when we first started into the industry, everybody was just trying to replace their guide. That was the idea behind that, and save money on paper, be green, provide information out there prior to the show. But everything ended as soon as the show ended. The usage would drop off. It was amazing. And we started watching what was going on with the actual apps. And the funny thing is that less than 10% of the people who downloaded the app and put it on their phone actually deleted it. So less than 10% of the people deleted the app. So we knew that it was still resident there, and we started talking to organizers about trying to provide content that they could expand the app over 365 days to make it a year-round thing. I think that's where we're going today. We're talking to clients about that. We've got new features and functionality to kind of hit on the 365-day year-round to keep drawing people back in, and it's starting to work. I think everyone is starting to realize that they have this audience. They worked so hard to build the audience in the first place with the app. You don't want to lose them as soon as the event is over with.
Now, Elizabeth, you mentioned to me that the mobile app is really sort of a central focus for your conference. So explain how that works and how your stakeholders depend on the mobile app.
Yeah, so it kind of goes along with what Jay was saying. We're doing a lot more with our app to try to highlight the other things that our association does. It's a focus for our conference, and so naturally it's a focus for us in the mobile app as well, where we're trying to give our attendees more information about the association and what they can do with us after they leave the conference. So, it has certainly replaced our printed program at this point, and so it is kind of the focal tool with, on site. That is what our attendees need to use to find what's going on and find their way around and get all this other information that they need.
Tahira, you really, in answer to that question, wanted to talk about the real-time qualities of information that comes from pretty much all types of technology. So tell me a little bit about what you meant by that.
So I think that there's a couple of things. As we start to look at, how do we engage people all year, that's awesome. But what are we doing with when they're engaging with us? So whether our real-time information is throughout the process or actually on site, the ability that we have to use beacon technology, to use heat mapping, to see how our attendees are moving, to understand traffic flow patterns of, whether that means that we're taking people on transportation somewhere and understanding how they're moving so we know when to send our shuttles back, if we're understanding how to move people through a show differently because we're seeing that, people are congregating around one area whereas other areas are kind of dead zones. What can we do to use gamification and push notifications and food and beverage to push people to other areas? So managing how people are moving in real time. When someone, says the room is too cold, when someone says I'd really like to meet, when someone says, I really want to, I wish that we could do X, or I wish I could find all people who like green. How can we respond and start to create environments for people that make it more personalized based on what's happening right now? We have the tools to do it. You need to have some manpower on site to help facilitate those things, because we can't do it all through just technology. But I think anything that's giving us that real-time information about what people are doing and feeling and what's happening, sentiment analysis can easily be done now on a lot of social media tracking. We have the ability to watch how people's eyes are moving to see what they're most engaged in an event if we want to get down into some really crazy technology. So we have a lot of technology ability to give us information. We have to have the ability to respond to it. But wow, the difference between, if you check into a hotel and now you're at the welcome reception, but you didn't like something in the hotel and you tweet about it and you hashtag it, and by the time that you get back to that room, your problem is resolved. That's using good real-time technology.
So, Tara, I want to stay with you for this next question, where I asked you about, when you deploy a specific technology, what are you always looking for it to do? And one of the things that you said was that if it doesn't have a positive impact on the participant experience, it's basically a no-go. So tell me about that.
I know that sounds really harsh, doesn't it? But I think that every time that, there's nothing more frustrating, not so much for our digital natives, but certainly for our digital immigrants, people our age, as an example, who there's nothing more frustrating than technology that doesn't work and technology that feels like it's impeding part of your experience. And so I think anytime that we look at a technology, it has to be simple to use. It has to add to the experience. It has to give valuable information. Has to make something more interesting or more accessible. And if it's not doing that, then, it could be the greatest in-kind sponsorship opportunity of all time. But you have to sometimes know when to say, maybe this isn't the right thing right now.
Elizabeth, you had a response that was very similar. So talk to me about having an impact on the attendee experience from your perspective.
I was thinking that the kinds of technologies I'm looking at are always have something to do with making that attendee experience better, whether that's making it more engaging, like Tahira was talking about at the beginning, just making it so that our content is more engaging, or they're able to connect with each other better. Moving into the area of, if it provides me more opportunities to get feedback from them, those are the kinds of things that I look at as far as maybe the new technologies that are on the market. But they always have something to do with improving the attendee experience. Otherwise, I don't know what the point would be of it.
Mm-hmm. So, Jay, I'm saving you for the next topic, which is whether what you're seeing across the industry is an increase, decrease, or sort of a status quo on spending. And you said that people are buying more technology, to solve or, problems or meet goals, but that once they automate the processes, they realize unexpected benefits. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think what happens here is that, we're, as developers, and listening to people like Elizabeth and Tahira, as, people who feed us information on what we should be developing and where we should be going. Processes, for example, with take a session and session maybe questionnaires, surveys, things of that nature that used to all be done on paper, and we want to get those out there so that we can get information about it, or maybe it's CEU credits. But what we learn from those things is we take that technology, we make it work a little bit better than collecting all the papers in 3 weeks to collate them and figure out all the information and put it in a spreadsheet so that you have it. And technology can solve that problem very, very quickly using a simplistic example here and give you back that information very quickly. But what we also learn is what their interests are, where they want to go to maybe plan out future topics that you want to go after for your next conference or your next event that's there. We had a show that we did, just a quick story, where it was second screen technology, and the audience engaged with the presentation through the device. And we tracked things like what slides had the most notes on them, what slides were shared the most, all these different things. And the sponsor of this particular group got their logo out there on the sessions, which was fantastic. But the quantitative piece that they got back from this, which we didn't even think about, was they were given the analytics. And they used those analytics, it was a big pharmaceutical company, they used those analytics to figure out what the trends were and what was going on inside the industry based on the topics and everything else that we gave them. And they actually took that, sort of an unexpected benefit, they actually took that and made it, used it towards what they thought were the trends that were going on, and used it for their marketing spend in future quarters. So that was a totally unexpected benefit from that. We thought that we were just providing this resource to people to make notes on presentations and share it with other people, and what turned out is that we gave the sponsor a great deal of information that they could utilize moving forward.
So I want to talk about security in event technology. And I asked you, Elizabeth, whether you were concerned about event technology security. And obviously you are, but you made an interesting comment, which is that you're concerned about having security, but maybe not at the expense of the ease of use of the technology. So you want to have it locked down, but you don't want to have your attendees really suffering because they have, double opt-in, login, lockdown, protocols and all those things. So talk about that a little bit.
I think the point we're at now is every piece of technology that we're deploying, we talk about security, each scenario, case-by-case basis. I was thinking when you and I were talking about, right now we're still using an open Wi-Fi network, and I've been reading that that's, not secure. And so in my mind, I just think, well, okay, so we can certainly add, a password, some kind of login page, things like that, but it's just one more step, one more barrier to entry for attendees to use something. We've gone a different route with the way that our attendees are going to be logging into our mobile app this year. And while we think it's just as secure, there was a lot of conversation about how that was going to work, what the passwords were going to be, where they were going to get them. But we're hoping it's actually a much more user-friendly way to get logged into the app this year. So I think in every case, it's a conversation balancing those needs.
Tahira, when we talked about security, you mentioned that it's definitely an issue. Association organizers see it as something serious, but the corporate event organizers are really concerned about security in event apps. And you even quoted me some statistics. I don't know if you can share those.
Yeah, so I think that statistics are always dangerous, aren't they? Because they're just numbers, really, that can change. Yeah. So I think definitely one of the things, anybody who looks at my LinkedIn profile will know I spent some time working with Quick Mobile, and the one full year that I worked there, we had 1,200 unique security questions that our development team had to respond to. So that's a lot of serious questions that are being asked by our clients that developers have to respond to. So I think that that's a really good indication that this is it's a point of discussion, and it's not something that you can talk about as you're about to launch your app. It has to be something that's talked about from the very beginning of the process, because the technology, what goes into the mobile app is typically information people can find in a whole bunch of different ways. Your name, your organization, your email, your phone number. Those are not particularly secret things to find. When you get to registration, though, and particularly when you get to high-level registration of international groups and where you're moving people through different places, we're storing credit card information, home addresses, passport information. You have to have that stuff locked down. And again, it can't be something that you're doing, as you're about to go on site and printing out your, final list. It has to be something that's done at the very beginning of the process. You need to know where your data is being stored. You need to know everyone's comfortable with that. It's not an issue that can be taken lightly on any level. So it is a serious issue.
So Jay, I hereby appoint you as the official event technology representative for the entire globe. And you were kind enough to give me some, best practices. So maybe just in a minute or two, just sort of run down this list of what event organizers really should be thinking about with regard to the security for event technology.
Well, I think there's, when we take on the responsibility from a developer standpoint, and whether that content comes to us from other resources or it's built inside of our software, either way, we have to protect it, and we have to make sure that we use some sort of encryption to protect that. I mean, I kind of equate it to the idea that my dad used to say, which was, you put a lock on a bike out there on the pavement to keep the honest people honest. The fact is that if they really want to steal your bike, they're going to cut the lock and get in and steal it. So, and I think we've all seen that, right, with our credit cards. I don't think there's probably anybody on this webinar that hasn't had their credit card compromised and got a new credit card in the mail, from that example. So we have to take the best steps that we possibly can from that side of it and use some encryption there. With regards to updates, vulnerabilities, they're discovered in common software all the time. We try to patch those. I know from our standpoint here, we go through quite a bit. We've had independent agencies go through all of our stuff to make sure that we're compliant and doing the best that we possibly can, using the latest in technology to be able to do those types of things. When it comes to passwords, it gets tricky, and I think it goes back to what Elizabeth was saying about the fact that there's a thin line here. We want to protect it in the mobile app or in our software, whatever technology that we're using, but we also need to make it simplistic. And if we make it too hard, then it becomes a barrier to entry. And opening up things that anybody can actually see, we don't have to protect. So there's that fine line that you all have to walk and try and figure it out. And that's where your provider comes in. That's whoever you're talking to about your technology. They should be able to consult with you on those particular areas and sort of work with you from that standpoint, I think. And that brings in the trust factor that I've kind of put out here.
Great. Elizabeth, I asked you what you consider to be event data. Explain to me those specific things that you're looking at in your event.
Yeah, so this is the area that I'm most excited about for the future, and I'm starting to do more with this for our association. So obviously at the beginning you have your whatever data you're collecting on your attendees via registration for your event, or if you're tying into your CRM, obviously some of that could be pulled in. The data that you already have on your attendees or customers. The area that I'm excited about that we're not doing a lot with yet, we've kind of started talking about personas, and I really want to find other ways of getting the psychographics about my attendees in addition to the demographics. I added a couple of questions to our registration form this year, which were, what are your goals? What is your main goal for the event? And then I added another question about how tech savvy do you feel like you are, because that relates to our content in a lot of ways. So taking those kind of two pieces of data, adding that, so taking your survey data, like we do session surveys, presenter surveys through the app and the website. We also do a post-conference survey. I feel like potentially down the road we might do pre-conference surveys of other sorts. And then I think Tahira was talking about this real-time tracking. So once you're on site at the event, kind of tracking what attendees are doing, where they're going. So what are they actually doing at your event? That technology, things like the RFID technology, is too expensive for an event of my size with our budget. So I can't just use RFID to track them with that, but I can use things like maybe what sessions have they said that they want to go to through the app, things of that nature, to at least get a general sense of maybe what sessions or exhibitors that they're seeing. And then finally, after the conference, if you can come up with ways of doing either additional targeted surveys or following up with them to see, what did they do differently because they attended your event. I think that's kind of that's going full circle with this whole process and making sure that the event was valuable for them because they actually did something different with what they learned or because of who they met at the event. So getting that data and tying that in and tying it all back to the segmented, targeted demographics and psychographics that you have. That's the stuff that I'm really excited about.
So Tahira, Jay thinks that event organizers aren't leveraging data to its full potential. You mentioned to me that you have at your disposal a data team that crunches numbers and provides you with insight. I'm intrigued by that. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
I feel very fortunate that, as in this particular organization, much of what we do, the summit that we do is really a very small piece of our overall strategy for the year. And our drivers are economic drivers and looking at the economic impact of technology and innovation across the province of British Columbia and how that fits into a global stage. And so we do have a data team here, and they're very diligent about taking all of the various data points that we have. So what we look at and what we're still measuring is the economic impact of the first and now the second summit that we've now hosted, looking at the economic impact. So going back and surveying the people who were involved in our venture capital program, who were involved in our B2B meetings, who attended generally the event. So the human geek in me loved one statistic we had from this year, which was the average was 15 new valuable conversations that people had had. And I thought that's cool. It's relatively soft data, but interesting data. But we do, we drill down across a lot of points for the various sectors that we're working with. And people who are way smarter than me, who are looking at data in way different ways than I would look at it from an event perspective, are really helping to support that. But Jay is right.
So Jay,
Elizabeth, I love what you're doing with the typographics.
So Jay, when your clients download this sort of raw data and the analytics that they get off of various technologies, what are they doing with it?
Well, like I said before, I don't think they're utilizing it well enough. I think that while we've just started with software and getting these types of data points that we get today, we're all learning on how to use it and what it can be used for. Before, at the beginning, it was just, tell me about the downloads. How many downloads do I have? How many downloads do I have? Mm-hmm. And I have this saying now that goes, if I have 1 million downloads and I only have 100 people using the app or the technology, was it successful? And the answer, seriously, is no. I think usage has become, something that's more important, and to take the information that you get from the usage to find out what people's interests are to help guide you as you move forward. Everything that we've talked about so far up to this slide and from the beginning of this webinar has talked about what technology can do for you from a usage standpoint and guiding you to help you make a better event, to help you pick topics that are going to, help you move forward, to everything that Elizabeth and Tahir are doing, to learn more about what they can do. That's what that's about, and that's really what we're talking about now.
So, Elizabeth, I asked you about pain points. I'm going to skip this slide. I asked you about pain points. What's the biggest pain point that you are experiencing regarding event technology? And you had a very interesting answer for me. Can you share your feelings?
Yeah.
Share your feelings.
Yes. Obviously, you could see from my quote on the slide, a very strong feeling about having been, an early adopter of event technology. I've been around these companies that have started in our industry, from the beginning, really. And what I've found over the past, 5, 10 years, how long ever, it's been working with, say, like mobile app companies, the frustrating thing for me mostly has been that these companies that I've worked with in the past just didn't seem to understand events at all. And I spent so much of my time when I was project managing a mobile app, either for a client or, an employer. I spent so much of my time just educating them on what we call things in our industry. And they just didn't, let's say an app company, builds an app for festivals, right? But then they're selling it in the conference market. And I just spent a ton of time explaining to them that things are just called, they're just called different things. And, you can't split up, you can't put presenters and attendees in the same category or whatever. There's just, a lot of things that I've had to deal with these companies. The sales process is always painful because either you get a super young salesperson that just doesn't know anything about anything, much less, our industry. However, we switched to Sherpa Solution this year, and they have been just great as far as that whole process goes. But every other company I've worked with in the past just has been terrible on all those fronts.
So, Tahira, I asked you about the biggest opportunity for event technology, in terms of impacting the industry. You talked a lot about integration. So can you talk a little bit more about that? What's going on?
What's going on? Oh, there's so many great platforms out there, but they all do very specific things. And when they all do very specific things and don't integrate well and play nicely with each other and don't have open APIs and don't have, those magical keys that make them talk to each other, it's very difficult what you end up doing is spending a lot of your time managing things like, how do I change the format of this spreadsheet so that it can go into this system? Or when really what I want is I want to be able to, from end to end, from the very beginning of my, first marketing to my end of my registration process, to my on-site experience, to my post-event surveys, to, as an exhibitor, to my lead gen and having things that I can just, plug and play into my Salesforce or Marketo or, whatever system you happen to be using along those lines. And to be able to follow the campaigns that we set up that the trade show was part of, all of those things should be tied together, and they're not, obviously. So I think that, as we continue to mature in the digital and technology space, we're going to have to continue to work with our technology providers to find, who are those key partners, who are you building. And I'm not saying that I necessarily want one company who does it all. That would be impossible. It would be like saying one event producer can produce all kinds of events. That, it's also, there's some commonalities, but there's some things I want people to be specializing in. But there's definitely, we need to find things that can talk to each other and work together and ultimately make it so that we have, nice, clean data from beginning to end. Pain points.
So, Jay, I asked you about where your clients sort of aspire. And you talked a lot about planning out the content and using these applications year-round. Talk to me a little bit more about now that we've got the technology, they know how to use it, they're starting to look at data, sort of where are they going? Where's the next step across the board?
Well, I think the next step, and I've mentioned this before, was the year-round engagement, using it as a year-round engagement tool. As I said before, you work so hard to build up the users and downloads and getting people used to using your software technology, only to leave it behind and then try and start that back up again at your next event. So I think this is a great opportunity, and you should aspire to sit down, plan out what your content is, plan out what you're going to use this for. You've got the audience. Let's build on the audience. It'll make it easier for you to promote the app, because you won't have to promote it as much because they will constantly be using it and relying on it. You have this opportunity in front of you to educate, learn more about them year-round rather than just at the event itself. You have all those opportunities at the palm of your hand when you start out, especially from the mobile standpoint, because we find that you see the statistics. Mobile internet access to the web is, superior under mobile than it is, from the home computer now. So you've got that opportunity. I think you need to take advantage of it and plan out what you're going to do from your content the day after your event is over. Talk about how great your event was, then maybe later, what goals you had succeeded in doing and what happened during the event, what you're planning for in the next event, industry news, membership news, anything of that nature that's going on. Education, you could build education seminars into it. There's so much more that you can do, and that's where I think that if you plan, you aspire to make those changes, the technology really becomes useful for you.
I would also just say, too, that I think that when we think about, because I do agree, Jay, I think that absolutely it would be an amazing tool, but it takes planning, and it also takes understanding that, I don't want to use my app every day. I don't want to engage necessarily with my association every day. I think that, I always say that really the only people that I want to see every day are my family, but I also have 2 teenagers, so, take that for what it's worth. So I think that, if we approach using an app on a year-round basis, when can you launch your registration so that you can just click a button in your app so that you can register for the next year? Is that at your event? Is it 6 months before your event? Is it, depends on your cycle. Is it, how can you drip content out? How can people be watching webinars like this? Or listening to webinars like this throughout the year, so that they remain engaged with not just the event, but ongoing with the association. I think that it's definitely something that still has a lot of room for improvement for the future.
Well, Elizabeth, one of the ways that event organizers can actually afford event technology is to use it to drive revenue. But when you and I were sort of talking about this, you mentioned that you have exhibitors that love and they can really wrap their heads around the traditional sponsorships. And so it's a little bit more difficult to, throw a technology-related sponsorship at them. But that maybe going down the road in the future, you'd get data that would, coming from some technology sponsorships that you could then go back to your exhibitors and maybe have an opportunity to integrate more technology that can drive revenue. Okay, I've probably just answered the entire question for you, but maybe just take a minute to tell me.
Right? What's fascinating to me is that pretty much all of my exhibitors are technology companies. And so it continues to fascinate me that they still kind of, prefer the old school printed versions of, sponsorships, logos on things, that kind of thing. So I just think in the future, the better data that I'm able to provide them, to give them exact ROI on, how many times their logo or their ad or whatever was seen, I think that in the future, that will help me, sell more of those digital opportunities.
So I'm back to you, Tahira, because I asked you about cutting-edge technology and working for a technology show. I realize it's a difficult question for you, but you talked about sentiment analysis. And that's, while I know what it is, I've not heard it in conjunction with events. So tell me a little bit more about how you want to use sentiment going forward to make your event better.
Well, so I think that, we sell our events based on the content. We're going to see these great speakers. We're going to, take all this amazing stuff back to our office. The reality is you might sell it to your boss based on content, but the reason that you're going to go back to any event is how you left feeling from that event. And so we now have a lot of tools where we can actually see how people are feeling about our event. Are things making them happy? Are things, are they asking questions about things that they're worried about that's keeping them up at night? How can we start to address some of those pain points or challenges for, either, again, in real time or, in the future at events that we're planning? Are people taking pictures of, things that they're seeing that they're curious about, that make them happy, that, if we look at this idea of now everybody has a camera in their hand and they're essentially lifescaping, whatever platform or multiple platforms they're doing that on, is your event really part of that highlight reel of their lives? Is it showing off, how are they increasing their social credibility and their social influence based on the things that they're seeing and sharing and extrapolating and growing from at your event? So I really think the more that we can build on the emotion of an event, that's going to be the things that are going to impact the return of the attendees. We're still going to be selling based on content, but the reason that you're going to go and bring a friend the next year is because you just had, let's call it an awesome experience. Only now we have ways of using our data and all of the other ways people are sharing their information to really build on that. Although I do agree that chatbots are super cool.
Well, I want to ask Jay about that, Jay, because that sort of, impacts you, I think, the most. Tell me what your interest is or how you feel about chatbots.
Well, I think it goes a little bit back to what Tahira was saying, right? Is what are people's eyes tracking the most? It's a learning type thing that's going on with technologies, and chatbots. That's exactly what they do, right? It's almost like an artificial intelligence that really learns what questions are being asked, the interests that are going on, and then it is there to sort of answer those questions for you, sort of automatically. It's also one of the biggest things that are going on when I say security. What I mean by that is, the actual physical security of the participants in the event at a venue, which has become a very hot topic right now with IEE, PCMA, and so forth, the Association for Associations, if you will, what's going on with that. And I think this is one of the areas that we'll all explore moving forward. Take some of that sentiment analysis that Tahira has, mentioned, and learn with that, and let the chatbots sort of answer those questions for you, or be there to support you, if you will, from that standpoint.
So my final sort of formal question before we get to the Q&A really has to do about areas of the event industry that require more technology innovation. And I'm going to have Elizabeth address that because you were quite honest about the trade show model sort of being a bit stale and how technology might be able to help us in that area.
Yeah, I just think that, a lot of shows are going with, hosted buyer programs and appointment kind of things, because I think they realize that people walking around a large room and getting attacked by aggressive salespeople is just not their idea of a good time. Now, certainly you have the folks that just want to walk around and pick up the free stuff, but that's not good for the exhibitors either. So I think there's just so much about our traditional model that is not working now, and it's not going to continue to work in the future. I see technology potentially playing a role in still having, physically kind of the setup that we're used to having right now. But if exhibitors could just, create more of an experience in their booth, make it more engaging and less, less salesy. And then there's obviously the huge opportunity that a lot of exhibitors, a lot of salespeople at shows don't even follow up with the leads that they get at a show. So there's clearly opportunities for data collection and analysis, and then using that from what they get there. So I think that the trade show might actually be the biggest opportunity.
So I want to go to some questions from the audience, and there's a lot of them. And the first one, Jay, is really for you. Do you see a need? Do you see a need for mobile platforms? For a mobile platform tightly integrated with back-end other than attendee engagement?
I'm not really sure I completely understand what they mean by tightly integrated with a back-end, but if I try and go off of that, I think all your technology, we talked a little bit about in this webinar how technology needs to all work together through multiple providers and so forth, and I think that's something that we all, want to achieve and aspire to do, because we can't all do it, everything. That just wouldn't work, and we need to be able to take our technology as we have it today, whatever we drive from our side, be able to share that with others and be able to have them utilize that, so that if it's their Salesforce backend or their, AMS backend, whatever it is. So yes, I think, the answer to that question would be yes, I do see a need for your mobile platform to be tightly integrated with whatever backend it is. Tightly integrated is a loose term, because there's many ways to make that happen.
So, Elizabeth, what current technology trends are improving exhibitor experience? I read in your bio that it sounds like you've tried like everything that comes down the pipe you've dabbled in. So tell me what you're, currently looking at to improve exhibitor experiences, how they're maximizing time on the floor. Let's go with exhibitor and attendee experiences.
Yeah, so I guess I kind of started alluding to just exhibitors to get a better ROI. I think creating an experience for the attendees. Some of them, obviously, these days are starting to play with VR, virtual reality. So depending on what kind of product you're selling, certainly you can, almost like transport the attendees, to another place, or, have them see, what your product does, that kind of thing. And I think on the attendee side, improving their experience, one of the things, I would say the cutting edge mobile app companies are doing a lot better job with mapping the show floor for the attendees. So making it easier for them to kind of find their way around the show floor and make sure that they do get to the exhibitors that they do want to see, if they are very strategic about it and not just kind of, wandering the show floor. So I guess it would be a couple things.
So, Tahira, how do you feel about this sort of everything under one roof, integrated platform for event operations, event management, registration, managed teams, on-site operations? Like, are you happy with one company? Yeah. Doing everything.
I think as soon as we find one that actually is as magical as we hope it is, that would be great. I just, at this point, and I'm currently in a major research phase so that we can find something that we can use in a more integrated fashion next year. So I haven't yet found that perfect magic bullet that's going to give me everything that I need. Honestly, managing the team is probably the easier part. The managing the sponsors, exhibitors, fulfillment, speakers, all of that is massively administrative, and just even finding one tool that can serve even just those three groups has proven to be a bit tricky.
Well, I
think
Jay,
it's really important. I just am still looking.
Jay, when you went from just being a mobile app company to a company that has a portfolio of different types of event management tools, you were thinking the same thing, getting into that space. You?
Yeah, exactly. We realized that, first off, when we first started, we had to integrate with, in some cases, 7, 10 different companies, and that integration at the beginning was not easy. It's gotten easier as we've moved along, but there's still some coordination of that goes on. We tried to pick other technologies that fit within the platform that we were trying to do and make it easier for the organizers or whoever our customer was at that particular point to be able to take a piece of all of our technologies together that were tightly integrated and make that work so that you were dealing with one provider that could provide sort of best-of-breed services across the board and doing that. And that was our goal when we move forward with the things that we've done. And it's been very successful for us. We've had a number of clients who have moved in that direction, and it's worked out very, very well for us. But I still find, now to give you an example, I just sat down the other day with IEE and talked to them about their mobile app for next year. And even though we supply a good portion of that technology for that particular event, Expo, we will still need to coordinate with probably about 7 other providers to make it all work into the mobile app. So I don't know that there will ever be, I certainly don't aspire to do all the things that they want to do inside their app with all of and us being the leader on all those products. I don't think that that's possible. But I do think the basics and sort of the one layer that we concentrated on was what we wanted to go after.
Elizabeth and Tahira, I'd like you to weigh in on this too. We've got a question from the National Association of Home Builders about which industries are more accepting of technology. And I know you both have been early adopters and have seen this transition over the years. Do you have a feeling, Elizabeth, is it just like the people that do tech shows that want all the event technology, or, is it just, the same across the board?
I would say, obviously, I naturally gravitate towards clients and employers that, are more on the cutting edge. And so that's why I'm currently working in an association where, technology is a focus. From what I've read, just in the other planners talking about things, I think at this point, certainly those companies and associations that have a technology focus have been, doing more earlier. But at this point, I definitely am reading about, financial meetings and other, even other, blue collar type associations that, I think at this point everyone is using technology to a degree. I think it kind of still depends on their audience and what they want. But at this point, everyone knows how to download a mobile app to their phone, right? So that really isn't a barrier like it was just, a few short years ago.
Yeah, I think it's agnostic. If I can weigh in on this for a second, because we do. I feel like every industry, from the technology side using our software to which you would think that is the most technological groups that would utilize it the most. But honestly, we do construction shows. We do, and some of those are asking for more features and more functionality, more so than even the technology groups. So I think it's agnostic. I don't think that there's any one particular industry that craves it more than another from the event standpoint, I would say.
I think from any standpoint. So, if we look at, the reality is this idea of digital transformation is actually impacting all industries. So, for us, a lot of the stuff that we're showcasing is how is digital transformation affecting forestry, mining, shipping, security, finance. if we look at, something like digital media, it's like how are we using, one of the questions, of course, that, I can see coming up is around VR and AR. To me, the interesting VR and AR that we're seeing isn't about events. It's about how it's being used for pain management, for training nurses in surgical units, for training pilots. So it's things that are so far beyond just the range of what we're doing with events. To me, that is what's super fascinating about technology. How we can then take some of those things and apply them to events, really becomes about, looking at, our sponsors and our exhibitors and helping them understand how technology, by which I do not mean putting a plasma screen with a video running in the background in your booth, but how actually integrating the technology experience into your booth, whether it's a 800 square foot island or a 10 by 10 booth, how you can use that to help draw the people that you want to talk to you, especially when you get into a big show where people really do need to personalize their experiences. So, I think if we look at something being cutting edge, it's about how do we continue to use all of these amazing data tools to continue to personalize the experience so that our participants have a better experience, but also our exhibitors and sponsors leave feeling more fulfilled with their experience, because their leads aren't, just a number of leads of people who came and picked up swag, but they are people we had real conversations with about real business we could do based on the multiple touch points we've had with them throughout the year that culminated in this face-to-face experience of coming to a meeting. So really just so much opportunity.
So I know that we're a bit over time, but I'd love for Elizabeth for you to share with us what you're doing with augmented reality and gamification.
Yeah, so we've had, the same game for a few years now that was attached to the mobile app, and knowing that AR, augmented reality, was going to be a hot topic just in general, but for our audience specifically. And this is a great tool that teachers can be using in the classroom. And so I really wanted to create a game for them using AR. And so what I've done is I've gone ahead and broken my own rule, which is I'm going to be asking them to download a separate app from our conference mobile app. But I've chosen Erasma because for them it will be the kind of app that they'll be able to use to create their own, AR games in their classroom. So I felt okay with having them download Erasma in order to play our AR game that I've developed. And I'm keeping it really simple this year. It's going to be just about 10 trigger images that will be placed around the conference. They'll find the signs because it'll be kind of a consistent logo graphic to find where they go and scan the trigger image, and then they'll get a little kind of clue that will pop up, and then after that it'll be some kind of resource that we want them to learn more about what our association does, or something useful and helpful for them will be the second resource that pops up as an overlay on their screen once they scan that trigger image. And at the last stop, we'll just have a quick Google form to ask them a few of the questions of things that they would have learned along the way. So it's not going to be, airtight as far as, people not being able to cheat and stuff like that. But I think the value in it will be letting them play with some technology that they're going to be interested in learning about. We actually have sessions on our program about AR and things like that too. So I really wanted to make it really relevant for them as a learning experience. So we'll see how it goes.
We just did that at the summit we had over 1,000 youth and did an AR exploratory experience. And probably to me, one of the more interesting statistics was, I think 34% of the youth came in thinking that they might be interested in a career in technology, and it was well above 80% by the time they left 5 hours later. And I think a lot of that was probably due to seeing how, having a chatbot tell you where to go next while you, found really interesting things throughout with an AR experience. So they'll love it.
Yeah. Jay, there's one more question on augmented reality for you. Have you seen show organizers use augmented reality?
I would say that it's been very limited. Both Tahira and Elizabeth are really sort of, I would hate to say this, but I mean it in a very good way, on the cutting edge of what they're trying to do for their shows, where I would say that most are not. So they're open to exploring and trying new things and doing that, but we really haven't seen a lot of it that's going on. We're certainly paying attention to it. It's one of those areas where we're doing some testing today and backgrounds and doing things of that nature, but I haven't seen enough of it. As I said before, these technologies that come out, it's always important to take a look at how they're going to integrate into this industry, the event industry, and make it work within this industry. Case in point, a good one, in fact, was, Pokemon Go. Everybody, when that came out, there were a number of consultants and people writing articles about how Pokemon Go is that right for your next event. And many of them were just talking about the technology, but not actually how that would work within the event itself. And there were a few people who tried it. It didn't go over. It's pretty much dead at this point, but you can see or hear, what both Elizabeth and Tahira have done with augmented reality, because that's what that was a portion of, and created it so that it's working within their event, and give it a try and see how it goes and put it out there. That's how the mobile app kind of came about when we first started doing it at the beginning. You put it out there and you learn and you make it work within the event industry.
Well, thank you, first of all, to our audience who indulged us with an extra 7 minutes. But knowing all of you panelists, we love to break rules. That's why we're in event technology and in this industry. So I just, to close our webinar today, which was all you need to know about event technology trends, I urge everyone to download and read the report that TSNN has put together. It has some amazing statistics on what event organizers are doing and thinking and how they're applying technology today that I think could be very informative for them and the event technology partners. I'd also like to thank our sponsors from today, Signature Boston, Core Apps. Thank you so much, Jay, for making it possible for me to talk yet again about event technology. And, of course, Onstream. And I'd like to let everyone know that this presentation will be available on the TSNN website in its entirety, so you may listen at your leisure again and again. And I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the week, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That does conclude today's webcast. You can now close out of your browsers and have a great day.